Greetings, this is Sean, and today I am going to be making an axe for my Colonial Carpenter shop. I'm starting off with this piece of light gauge sheet metal, and I made this little template out of just a piece of cardstock, and I'm going to trace this that pattern onto the metal using a Sharpie, of course. And I'm just going to take my favorite pair of scissors, which I got these with a leather making kit, but they cut through this light gauge metal really, really well. Anyway, so I'm just going to cut this pattern out real quick. And yes, I dropped things on the floor. It was one of those days. I dropped a lot of stuff that day. Anyway, this is the tricky bit. I'm trying to cut the curve, but there's a close-up of my hand. I only have the one angle on this one. My 360 camera didn't record very well. I kept having issues again. But I think I'm going to have to get me a new one of these days. But anyway, I'm taking the piece of metal and putting it in a vise, and there I've got just a magnet to hold it so it doesn't fall down through, and just to flatten it out so it's gives me something to work with. Now I'm just going to take a file, half round file, half flat, and I'm just going to deburr it a little bit and kind of make sure that it's all nice and symmetrical around that curve area there. The idea is what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take I'm going to be putting this onto a 1/8 inch dowel, and that is a 1/8 inch piece of aluminum rod. So they're basically the same size, and I'm just going to try my best to fold that in half around there to shape it. The reason I didn't put it on the handle, the wooden handle itself, is because I'm going to be soldering that metal closed to form the head. And so I'm going to do it around the metal so that they don't burn the wood. And here I am just trying to shape the front of it and shape it around the handle like that, which works out pretty good. Give it a little tap with my jeweler's hammer just to make sure it's nice and tight. And there you can see I missed a little bit, but that's okay. Just trim it off and shape it the way I need it to be shaped. Now I'm going to open it up wider so I can get my wood jaws in there, just to give it a little bit of kind of a cushion for holding that. Now I'm just kind of squeezing it to get it as closed as possible. There'll be a little bit of a gap, but I'll take care of that here in a minute. Now, this tool here that you're going to see, this is a self-feeding soldering iron. There's a little trigger that I can pull, and it automatically feeds the solder up to the tip. It's really quite handy. It was worth an investment for me. I do a lot of electronics work too, so this came in very, very handy. But basically what I'm doing is I'm just heating up the metal, and the solder that I'm using has a flux built into it, already in it, and so it just helps it to flow really well on that thin metal. I actually tried using a torch with solder, and it didn't work very well, so this worked. Is great. So I'm putting on a little bit more than I needed to, so I can kind of build up build it up a little bit, make it a little bit heavier looking, so to speak. But trying to get it down into the crack a little bit there as well, just to help to seal the two pieces together. And it does a really good job. I'm very, very happy the way it turned out. What I'll do is I'll end up taking a pair of pliers here and heating it up, and then giving it a squeeze so that it'll make sure that it gets all nice and sealed closed. Just like that, and it is hot. When I take it out, you'll see me kind of flick my hand. Yeah. So what I'm doing is I'm dipping in some water to cool it down real quick. And there you can see it kind of. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that solder that's there, that's that big blob of solder, and I'm going to take my wire cutters and cut them off, my end cutters. Good thing about having a metal or a magnet in the wood. It helped to hold it so it didn't fall down the trash. Got a trash can down below. Anyway, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a file and just file that a little bit smoother, and get rid of some of the lumps. And no, this one does not function. It doesn't actually cut anything. So now what I've got this piece of dowel, and I'm just gonna I cut it off of the thing, and I'm gonna just kind of sand it down a little bit. And this was one I had tried an experiment trying to do some threading, making threads using a die and tap on it, and that's what the end of it is. It was me trying to do that with. So I just used that piece because the dowel itself was actually a 5/32 inch instead of a 1/8, so it was too big to fit in that hole, so I had to shave it down, so that's what I used, but I did that off camera. So anyway, here what I'm going to do is I'm going to wedge it, I think is what they call it, where they put the piece of metal down to the top to kind of hold it in place. I'm not using any glue on this. There's no glue. If I ever needed to, if it ever got damaged or whatnot, I could take that off and put a new one on that handle. So that's what I'm doing now. Is I've got that little brad that you saw, and I'm going to poke a hole in the top of it. Actually, I'm going to sand it first, make it flat, and then I'm going to poke a hole in the center of it. Well, I thought it was in the center of it, as you'll see here in a second, and then I will tap that brad down into that hole to kind of hold it in place so it doesn't come off, so the head doesn't come off. But here in a minute you'll see my one and only oopsie for this particular build. It didn't go straight down and cracked the handle up there at the top, but I'm not worried about it. This will be one of those old ones that's sitting in the corner waiting to be, fixed and whatnot, I guess is what how I'll put it into the thing. But anyway, I'm not going to fix it. I'm going to leave it cracked. Let me know what you think in the comments. This is a quick one today, and have a better day, as I always say.